Hello everyone, and welcome to this video where we will cover two topics for interpersonal effectiveness level 3, and that will be the broken record and clouding. Now, this is an interesting one, and for the broken record especially, it kind of reminds me, the first time I heard of it, of how insane it sounded and originally felt to do it. Just like half smile felt pretty insane and uncomfortable and odd to do initially, but now is one of my go-to skills that is really helpful because it works. I mean, we have to remember that if these skills made it into dialectical behavior therapy, they have been tried and tried again. They've done clinical studies, they've done experiments, they've done, things where they've had people actually implement these to make sure they're effective before they go in. So whenever I see a DBT skill like one of these, it kind of makes me go, oh my gosh, I don't know if I could really do that, or the other person's going to think I'm crazy. I keep in mind that these skills got in here because they were tried and true and proven to be effective, and that helps me to have a willingness to actually give them a try. So maybe that will help you as well. I also want to say that I think that especially for the role-playing type activities that we sometimes like to do in class, broken record and clouding would be excellent ones to do. So if you are willing, please make a note right now to mention when we get to the homework section in class next week that you're willing to do a role play on broken record and clouding, and we will make time for that. We'd love it, actually. I think this would be a good opportunity to practice. And I know we might get a little silly, but we can also be really serious and say, how would I use this in real life? And have the other person play the role of someone who may actually really be on the other side. We'll do a really realistic portrayal. And hopefully at some point in your life, this skill will come in handy when you observe or find yourself in a situation similar to whatever may come up in a role play. That all being said, I am on page 216 in the textbook, and I am going to read and also ad lib and add some thoughts and so on as I go along, as I usually do when I do read from the book. So if you don't have the book available, don't worry. I am going to guide you through it. If you do have it and want it in front of you, again, I'm on page 216. I'm going to be doing broken record. Probing is actually a video that Alicia also did, so what you might want to do is after I'm done with broken record, pause this video and go and watch the one on probing by Alicia, and then continue on with this one to get to clouding. Whatever makes sense for you. If you want to pause now and look over the sections in the book to see how you'd like to proceed, please go ahead and do that. So let's go ahead. Broken record. You use this technique when someone isn't getting the message. So you've stood your ground, you've made your point, you've said what you felt, or you've said no, or you've expressed how you feel about something or what you're willing or not willing to do. The person isn't getting it. So what you want to do with broken record is formulate a short, specific, easy to understand statement about what you want. So what you're trying to accomplish, your object effectiveness. Ideally, keep it to one sentence. Offer no excuses or explanations. And this is not about being difficult or stubborn or rude. This is when you're at the point that you've already had the conversation, you're about to be blue in the face and the person still isn't getting it. And that's when you're resorting to this skill of practicing broken records. So just keep that in mind. Stand or sit straight. Talk in a strong, firm voice. So we're sending messages through our posture, our body language, our tone of voice, not just the words we choose, but also the way we appear to the other person. Then just keep repeating the statement as many times as necessary, varying a word here or there, but not much else, because you don't want to sound like a robot or sound like you're being rude or being a jerk, and just, repeating the same exact sentence like 50 times. We'll get into an example in just a moment. So in the additional instructions are don't argue, don't get angry, and don't try to debate or refute anything the other person says. Don't answer any why questions. For example, why do you want to, yada da da da, because that just gives the other person ammunition for their arguments. It keeps the thing going on and on. It's just never going to end if you keep engaging them in the questions when you're at the point that you're utilizing this skill. Respond by saying, I just prefer it, or that's just how I feel. Period. Under no circumstances should you offer additional information or evidence for your point of view. Again, it's just going to keep this thing going. It's never going to end. You have to put your foot down at some point. Just repeat politely and clearly like a broken record. Here's an example. Before we get into the example, for those of you who are too young to know this, a record or a vinyl is how music used to be played on a piece of equipment called a phonograph, and a needle would play on the record. And if there were a scratch in the record, there would be a skip and it would keep repeating. So let's say the song was Mary Had a Little Lamb. It might go, Mary had a, Mary had a, Mary had a, Mary had a. So that's what a broken record would sound like. And that's where they got the terminology for this particular skill. So just a heads up. And these days you guys know about records because DJs still scratch them and use them in their presentations and in their partying and music and whatnot. So the example here is Sam says to the neighbor, your tree has a large branch suspended over my roof. I'm concerned that the next big storm could bring it down on my house. I'd like you to get an arborist to cut off the limb. Bill says, it's been like that for years. I wouldn't worry about it. Sam says, I think that branch is a danger to my house. I'd like you to have it removed. Bill, relax. That branch will still be up there long after we're pushing up daisies. Sam, it's hanging over my roof and I'm concerned about it. I'm asking you to remove it, Bill, before it falls. Bill, why have you gotten so nervous about it all of a sudden? Sam, the branch is over my roof, Bill, and it needs to come down. All right. Sam really stuck with it, and he didn't answer the why question. He just stood to his guns. I mean, how many times does he probably, it says here, why are you so nervous about it all of a sudden? But maybe he's dealt with Bill in other situations where Bill hasn't taken him seriously or followed through on things that needed to happen. So if you have a situation that you can plug into this, let us know. And also, again, if you're willing to do a role play on Broken Record, please be prepared to tell us that when we go into the homework section next week. Next, you might want to pause this recording and go and watch the video from Alicia on probing. And when you're ready, come back and unpause. We'll go on to clouding. Okay, guys, so we're moving on to clouding. It says here, now I'm on page 217, this technique allows you to, quote-unquote, agree in part with someone without accepting that everything they say is true. This calms people down and stops the win-lose arguing game. The key is to find some part of what's being said that you can accept and then to acknowledge that the other person is right about that. Ignore the rest of their argument. One way to agree is to modify words of sheer exaggeration, such as always and never, which I also refer to as red flag words, because rarely is anything in those categories. Here's an example they give in the book. The critic says, you always get pissed off over little things. And you say, it's true, there are times I find myself getting irritated. Ooh, I love that. Because it's so easy to get on the defense if someone accuses you of always or never doing something. If you're willing to be the bigger person and say, it's true, there are times I find myself getting irritated. So finding some truth in it without accepting the exaggeration, you really can diffuse the situation. They may be surprised that you're willing to agree or take responsibility, but in your heart of hearts, you're not agreeing that you always or never do anything, but that you sometimes do. And that can really help to diffuse things. Here's another example. The critic says, you never support me when I need something. And then you say, it's true, there have been several times when I couldn't completely support what you were asking. Wow, I'm going to try this actually in the next few days. I think this could be really helpful. And I'd like to hear what happens for you and also on this one with clouding if you're willing to do some role playing. It says here, notice how clouding steals your critic's thunder and neutralizes his or her argument. Now the door is open to real negotiation or legitimate yet very different needs. So if someone says to you, you never listen to my advice, I'm always trying to help you, and you never listen to anything I say. For me, I pretty much notice myself getting on the defense pretty immediately if someone accuses me of always or never doing anything, and that's why they're some of my red flag words. But how about the next time someone says something like that? You never take my advice or listen to what I say. It always has to come from a doctor or a friend. And even if they say the same thing that I've been telling you all along, you never listen to me first. I'm going to try instead of going, what do you mean I never? I listen to you sometimes. How come you use the word never? What about the time that No, I don't have to go there. I don't have to go there. With clouding, I can say, you're right. There are some times that I haven't, or maybe there are many times I haven't listened to you on the first try, and then just go from there. And it's maybe they'll be like, well, at least she's acknowledging it. At least she's admitting it, and it may make them feel heard and understood too. If they're saying something like that, they're probably coming from a place of hurt and feeling offended themselves. So, excellent work so far, you guys, in Interpersonal Effectiveness 3. Alicia and I are very proud of you. Thank you for doing this video on broken record and clouding, and we look forward to having you in class next week. Bye for now.